is happening, everybody? All right, time for a bonus round of Mopar Chat late night. Hope everybody's having a good time this evening. Me and my buddy Torquay down here going to be hanging out with you. He's a little bit off camera. And he's tired. Yeah, he's already bored with the show. Isn't that nice? So, the reason why I'm doing this one is, there were some topics that I didn't get a chance to really jump on last time. Oh, let's get some lights going on in here so people can see me. This freaking hat off of my head. What? What are you doing? You being shy? Anyway, what's up, Scout 426? How's it going? So one of the things I wanted to talk about, it's one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, what are the limits of the 392, and why is it that the 392 seems like it's made out of glass, at least in terms of modifications? And I got to tell you, a lot of that reputation is somewhat unfounded. I think that a lot of guys, they look at the 392 the same way that you would look at, well, Scat 426, cast pistons. That's not the only reason. But a lot of the reason why guys will get astray, so to speak, or run into problems with that platform is that you're looking at it from the same point of view that you would look at, an old 350. You'd look at it like a 302 or a 351, or even the older Mopars, and of course the LS. And obviously there's a lot of direct line of sight comparisons that guys try to, you try to make between the 392 and any of the LS platforms. And there's some things that, if you have that mindset, can really get you into some trouble. One of the problems with the 392 is the perceived problem is that it's got a high ring land. Now, what the high ring land is, and this is on the piston. Hey, to you, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate that a ton, man. That's right off the bat. Thank you so much. The problem with the 392, the perceived problem with the 392 is that the ring land is too high, and that's an issue. It's actually engineered like that from an efficiency standpoint. And because of that, it is a little bit more fragile in terms of taking outright punishment. But that being said, it can handle a ton of power. It's really more in the tuning than anything else. Now, I will admit that there have been some bone stock cars that have failed. To you, thanks for checking in, and thank you again so much. I know some of you guys are watching the fight tonight. I forgot to order it, so I'll be checking those out, or the results of that out later. But don't spoil it for me, though. But at any rate, the main thing is that in the tune on those cars, one of the things that guys would really get wrong early on was they would have the same mindset of a wedge head in terms of tuning. And you can't do that with the 392 or with any of the Hemi platforms. It's the dynamics of what's going on in the cylinder are a little bit different, and it's really not a good idea to try to throw timing at an engine that is, number one, running 2 spark plugs, and number 2, just has a different set of conditions going on in the cylinder under compression than a normal wedge head. And that's where a lot of those cars, or a lot of those tuners, went a little bit wrong. They would command too much timing. You would get detonation, and because of the detonation, you would have, you'd pop a ringland. But the biggest time where that would come into play was actually low-speed spark knock, and that is the actual condition that would typically pop that ringland on those Hemis. So just wanted to kind of speak on that for a second before I start answering questions. That's one of the questions that I do get answered a ton. And it's the Hemi is kind of a funny engine. It kind of goes against conventional wisdom, where I'll give you the best example was my 392. That car did not like a lot of timing. It was just one of those situations where if I threw timing at it, whether it was on the dyno or at the drag strip, I went back-to-back comparisons on tunes, both at the track and on the dyno, and the car just did not pick up any power and didn't get any bump in ET. While I was doing that, I was monitoring basically short-term knock retard, and yeah, I wasn't really seeing any additional short-term knock retard. So it wasn't a knock threshold issue with my car under high load and on the launch. It was just the fact that the car did not respond well at all to more timing. But that timing does still equate to variances in cylinder pressure, and quite honestly, fuel quality plays a pretty significant role with some of the failures that you would see. And unfortunately, at the time, a lot of the tuners early on didn't realize that they were kind of running a ragged edge, especially in terms of flame front, the flame propagation across the cylinder, and how that would affect the actual condition of low speed spark knock. You'd have cars that would literally, the guys would tip into the throttle, and that's when you would start to see a misfire counter go nuts, or you'd feel a misfire. So at any rate, a little bit of the history behind that. I know that's kind of boring, a little bit like a sideshow type of a topic, but wanted to get a little bit more in depth because I know that question does come up a lot. So let me check back in. Again, I want to thank TU for that contribution, man. It really does mean a ton to me. Thanks again. Keenan H, howdy B Mason. Howdy, Keenan. How are you doing? Michael Corleone, Professor Mason. That's me. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Scout 426. One question. Fully ported intake manifold, Fastman throttle body with no tune. Can it be done? Would I recommend it? Yeah, absolutely. It can be done, and you don't need a tune for that. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about the intake manifold, you know, the reason why you can do it is, well, number one, the Fastman throttle body is a great addition to your car. And again, I don't get paid. This is not an endorsement or anything like that. It's just I'm trying to get you guys information on parts and equipment that I have seen actually work either on a dyno or at the drag strip. And the Fastman is a factory piece. It is a true through ported unit. Works great, man. I mean, zero issues. Do not need a tune or a tune adjustment for it. As a matter of fact, we used my buddy Chris's Charger. Was one of the cars that after putting the throttle body on the car, just checking for basic data sets, everything looked great. So now, granted, I did when that car went on the dyno, I did reset all adaptives, but that being said, I mean, it really wasn't needed. There was nothing really changed there. The intake manifold also does not need a retune. Although I will caution you on this, there's a one-off scenario where the short runner, basically the short runner actuator, let me stop right there. You need to use your stock intake manifold as the intake that's ported. Every ECU is a little bit different. You guys always hear me talk about every Mopar is a snowflake, and there are subtle changes to operating systems as cars are going down the assembly line. And one of the parameters on intake manifolds is the range of the accepted range of the open and shut percentages as and this is just based on, reading your data logs, but the open and shut percentages for that short runner valve, some intake manifolds are more or less open when those valves open. It doesn't affect how the vehicle runs. The main focus is just making sure those runners pop open. Some of them have more range than others. No two that I've messed with have been the same, although some that are more consistent have been the later intake manifolds that were basically 2015 and up. The reason why I say send your stock manifold out for porting is because the issue you can run into is if you use an earlier intake manifold that has a little bit more range on that valve, you can throw that P1004 code, which can get a bit annoying. I've actually had them literally throw the code, or had one throw a code. I could make that car throw the code at will. So a real weird scenario. I used an earlier model intake manifold on my car and didn't run into any problems, but just just to be on the safe side, make sure you're using your stock intake manifold. And when you take your short runner actuator off, keep your short runner actuator, stored in a cool, dry place. Let's see. Santos, sup, Santos? Patrick Stevens, first time we're enjoying so far. Well, thank you for joining, man. I appreciate you coming in. Symphonics asks, have I driven a new 18 GT with a 10-speed yet? Yes, I have. Unfortunately, though, it was not a performance pack, but it was the 5-liter with the 10-speed automatic. And I came away from the experience with a couple of what's going on with the lighting on this thing? I came away from the experience, I don't know, a little bit. I don't want to say underwhelmed, but I can tell you that car, it just did not deliver the driving experience that the Dodge does, just with that just juicy hit of torque. You compare the any of the new Mustangs with any 392 powered car, and the first takeaway that you'll have is just the Mopar is just a richer driving experience. Now, that being said, I guess the question is, well, how did the Mustang run by comparison? You never really got the sense that the car was throwing you in the back seat. I guess the best way I could explain it is it's like riding in an airplane, like a jet at takeoff. You never really feel the acceleration the way that you would feel the acceleration in a strong car, but that car, or that airplane in this case, it's dialing itself up to about 180 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour before it takes off. That's really how the Mustang felt to me. I wasn't really, it wasn't, just wasn't as rich of an experience as you would hope for. Now, that said, a performance pack with different rear gears would probably have been better, but I don't know by how much. And one of the other takeaways is that the car just keeps building power and just keeps revving. Again, it's you know that you're accelerating, you know that the car is fast, but because you can't really feel it the way that you can with the 392s, it gives the impression, like from the butt dyno, that it doesn't make as much power, even though due to gearing. By the way, the fifth gear on that 10-speed is really what makes the difference with those Mustangs being able to mile an hour as well as they do in the quarter mile. But that being said, I just got to tell you guys, as much as I wanted to like that car, I didn't. Now, again, I got to repeat it. It was not a performance pack car, but even though it wasn't a performance pack car, I think I got a pretty good idea of how that thing is going to perform. Definitely a strong performer. Definitely, for my taste, really not something I would go out of my way to re-experience, but it's just flavors of ice cream at this point. And I'm at the point now where I just, the torque is the torque is really what sells that 392 by comparison. Dima 5563, what's up? How you doing? Let's see, Midwest Mopars, how's it going? How's it going, y'all? Phoenix 98, what's up, brother? What's up, man? Hondo, good morning. Good morning to you. Zephyr R&D, how is it to have real hydraulic steering again in the Hellcat? Yeah, no kidding, right? It was always one of the things I liked in his 6.1 over the Scat Pack. I do have to say that I like having hydraulic steering back. It's funny because I didn't realize how much I missed it until I didn't have it. So for you guys that aren't in the know, the 15, 16, and 17, they may have switched it in 18, all had traditional hydraulic steering. And the difference between an electric steering setup and hydraulic steering is in actual road feel. The hydraulic steering just feels tighter, and you feel a little bit more connected to the road. And I don't know why that is, at least not from an engineering standpoint. I don't see how you couldn't engineer that into electric steering. But the fact remains is that steering is just so much more, I don't know, direct. And you also get, it also feels more responsive than the electric steering that was in the 392. I would say that, it's a little bit of a bummer not being able to switch, modes the way that I was able to with the 392. But that was just, more of a gimmick for me than anything else. But No, I wouldn't trade that hydraulic steering for electric steering ever with the Hellcat. Stephen Van Oy's checking in. Jim Nelson, thoughts on the Challenger 1320? Man, I'll tell you what, I like the car. And to be honest, it was a bit of a toss-up between me getting a 1320 and me going with a Hellcat. I decided on the Hellcat because I wanted just the robust, nature of the Hellcat. And one of the things that bugged me about the 1320, if I'm being honest, and actually this is the thing that kind of turned me off to the 1320. The 1320 still uses the HP70 automatic. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the HP70, especially for NA guys. You can build a pretty stout 426 and still back it up with the HP70. The problem, though, is that car is marketed and directed specifically for guys that are drag racing. And I got to be honest with you guys. You're taking your car to the drag strip regularly and often, you're going to be putting a lot of wear and tear on that thing. And I would have hoped that they would have put an HP90 behind that car. It would have fit the mold a little bit better, so to speak. And, if you've got a grassroots drag racer that's really wanting to campaign a factory stock drag race specific car, that would have been the perfect way to go. Now, to put things into perspective, the HP70 is rated at 700 Newton meters of torque, which basically, I think, if I'm not mistaken, translates to, I don't know, you guys do the math for me, but I think it's like 535 pound-feet of torque, give or take, which is not too far outside of what that 392 is capable of, especially when you throw some mods at it. The HP90 is 900 Newton meters, but that is an underrated transmission by every stretch or every metric you can think of. And it's a stretch to actually put that thing in a position where you're going to blow it up. I mean, you really have to be dialing that thing up pretty hard. There's plenty of guys that are out there running mid-nines with an HP90. So that's not to say that you can't get there with an HP70, but for me, I just would have preferred to see a little bit more robustness with that package. And the second thing is absolutely the fact that they're running a 309 gear in that car. That was really, to me, the transmission was one thing, but the situation with the rear gear, or at least not having an optional rear gear, was kind of the final nail in the coffin for me with the 1320. Because to be honest with you, aside from the gadgets and gizmos that you get in the drag mode for that transmission, and some suspension tuning, which is my understanding is the only two main differences between that car and a stock Scat Pack, and I didn't see there being enough value in the 1320 to justify the added expense when you could pick up a Scat Pack core and basically do the same thing and save yourself some money. Plenty of guys are out there running great ETs. I mean, there's several guys right now that have either come very close or have beaten my street trim record at this point when I went 1139 at a 118.5. So, and that was with an SRT, by the way, full weight. So when you look at it from that point of view, looking back at it, I could easily put together a package that would best my old car, and you could do it with either a stock Scat Pack or a 1320. I don't know that the 1320 would, in the features that it has, would get you to that promised land, so to speak. But again, it's a great package. It's a great first effort. But until Dodge takes that seriously, it's kind of hard for me to take it seriously, especially in light of the fact where the Demon, with the Demon, they went from the 262 to the 309 rear gear. The 1320 is kind of marketed as the NA Demon, or at least that's the way it's being sold to us and told to us by the press. I really would have liked to have seen maybe a 370 rear gear, at least that's in the parts bin. And if nothing else, maybe develop a 331 gear, which mathematically would be the exact right gear for that car. So those are my thoughts on that thing. Racer X, what's new, buddy? What's up, buddy? Y'all racing tonight? Is it still raining up there? Man, we're just coming down off of having a ton of rain over here. So, but our track is shut down for December, so I couldn't have done anything with it anyway, but yeah, we were getting flooded down here. Racer X says he's considering moving from E85 to steam power. It seems like a step backwards in technology, but you know, I don't know that HP Tuners has the capability to help you tune through that, but we'll have to take a look at that and make sure you put whatever you're smoking into FedEx for me here pretty soon. Let's see, Zephyr R&D, still thinking over the wide body scat. How is the adjustable Bilsteins with the heat soak on track days? Do you think a proper coilover would change the car besides the obvious? Man, I have not heard of anybody having any issues with fluid overheating with those cars on road courses. There are quite a few guys that have been running them, but keep in mind, those are mainly hobbyists more than anything else. They're not actually, you know, they're not track heads. If it were my car and I were planning on doing any significant track days with it, you know, something that was, excuse me, you know, something more than like a, you know, 20-minute sessions or, you know, 15-minute sessions or whatnot, or, you know, 30-lap sessions, I would probably take a look at doing coilovers just for two reasons. One, you get better adjustability aside from just the 3 settings that you get from the factory, which, by the way, are night and day from each one in that package. You can get a little bit more actual adjustability where you can load up the rear end a little bit more firm. You know, you can do a lot of things, obviously, with a set of coilovers that you can't do with the stock suspension. Now, that expense is going to be only justifiable if you are taking your car to a closed circuit on a regular basis. If not, you just want to take it out and have some fun, throw some 888s on an extra set of wheels, take it out there and go piss off some of the other guys. Because believe me when I tell you, that big girl will hold her own on a road course. You just got to be, you've got to be aggressive with them, and you've got to get out there and just basically run it. But she'll do just fine. You'll have a lot of fun. Get a lot of reports from some of the guys that actually run their cars on road courses, and y'all will be surprised how well they, this car that's not supposed to handle, you'd be surprised how well it does handle. Racer X checking in. The rain sucks, dude. Tell me about it. I don't know how many inches of rain we got last night, but we had some pretty decent flooding here in H-Town, Texas. Hondo's asking, how are the older 300 SRTs? Man, I tell you what, I still would love to get my hands on a black SRT 8300, man. Those are awesome cars. No real issues to report with those cars. They got the 6.1, and yeah, that engine's pretty freaking durable, and they're backed by a NAG 1, which, I mean, that thing's been backing up big horsepower E55s for a long time. So as long as, you know, the car's been maintained, I think you'll be fine. I know that there was like a bad run of cylinder heads at some point where they were dropping valve seats, but I got to be honest with you, if it was going to fail, I'm pretty sure it would have failed by now. Those are actually very robust cars. Let's see. Midwest Mopars is asking, would I-309 rear end swap the Hellcat? I'm on the fence with that right now. I've got a... I actually have access to a 309 gear right now, and I've been teetering back and forth on throwing the 309 in that car. What I want to do first is I need to get a drive shaft in that car that will actually not vibrate my teeth out of my skull the way that the last one did. It's been sent back. They're going to rework it, take a look at it, and send me back another one. But yeah, that was a real treat. Swapping that thing out only to do a road test and have it, you know, perform so poorly. But I would want to have a more robust drive shaft in it if I'm going to run a 309, because you are actually applying more torque, or at least the torque is, well, yeah, you're applying more torque with the 309, and that's going to be translated through the drive shaft. So I've thought about it mainly from the point of view that it would be a little bit more fun to drive, but the car is already a lot of fun as it is, and the stories are a little bit back and forth on the 309. So one of the reasons why why you might not see gains with a 309 gear is because you got to look at cat overtemp protection with the car going through the traps, and when the car goes into cat overtemp, it does nose over pretty good at the end of the run. And that's something that is going to come into play a little bit sooner with a 309 gear. I believe that's one of the reasons why you just don't see a 309 translating directly into ET in a quarter mile. But you do see a benefit in the 8th mile just because you're not getting to that cat overtemp yet. That's easily mitigated with the tune and a cat delete pipe. So, but you know what? Again, I'm on the fence. I'm going to get that drive shaft in the car. I'm going to see what I can get out of this car with stock pulleys, stock tune, stock cat, stock everything. And before I start doing any mods to it, I want to get the most solid and the fastest baseline I can possibly get out of it before I start throwing any mods at it, doing any tuning or anything like that. We'll see how it does. So far, that car has really been impressive and been a lot of fun to drive in bone stock form. I think that, you know, if it's a question of ET, I might have been maybe a 10th quicker with the 309 through the 8th and maybe half a 10th quicker through the quarter, or maybe a 10th of a second quicker in the quarter, mainly just due to cat overtemp. That's kind of my thoughts on that, or the best I don't know, the best guess, I guess, as far as what gains you would get. And I can tell you, I probably wouldn't lose any fuel economy. It's one thing I'm really liking about the Hellcat is it gets really good fuel economy. Better than my 392, by the way. Symphonics, 4 best sounding cars in my opinion. Number 1, Romeo 4.6 liter overhead cam. That car with a set of Flowmasters or really any aftermarket exhaust, for some reason the tone and the note of that car always sounded really good. Second on that would obviously be the 392 and the Hellcat. I have to kind of, you know, ball those up together. Third would actually have to be the Gen 2 426 Hemi. That engine at full song has got a wail to it that is just freaking unbelievable. Fourth would probably be, man, I like the way the Coyote sounds. And fifth would probably be probably have to be a Buick 455. Just because they've got that real deep, kind of a growl to them. And you would, you know, I remember hearing them and seeing them on the river and at the lakes, and that engine, not only in the car but in a boat, because those are real popular for jet boats. It was just such a damn good sounding engine. And honorable mention, it's tough to beat any of the GM big blocks when they've been worked over a little bit at full song, especially one of those engines at about 7,000 RPM. Let's see. MLG killing GXR. Am I reading that? He says, dude, really? He's asking if he can get a public congrats because he lost his virginity to his boss's daughter and I am self-employed. Well, you know what? Cheers on you, man. Jackass. Let's see. Stephen Vanoy, the track is open in Las Vegas. Well, get out there and run some, man. I would love to actually run my car at Las Vegas. I think that would be a fun track to hang out at and see if I can't make the trek while I'm there back over to the West Coast, visit some old friends of mine. What are you doing? Swear that dog. Let's see. Racer X says he loves his 309s. Yeah, I love your 309s too. They seem to work pretty good. Can't wait to see what that thing's going to run this January, by the way. That car is going to set a number down. It's going to be a good one. Let's see what we got. Jay Palmer, yo, what's up? Racer Excessive. Yep, he is in the house hanging out with us. Phoenix 98, old Fox body with off-road H and flow sounded awesome. You know what? Shame on me for not bringing that one up. That was, I'll tell you what, I'll put that one head-to-head with the 4.6. There is absolutely nothing as distinctive, even still to this day. You know what's funny is that where I live, there's actually still quite a few guys that are out running those, the old Fox bodies around, and there's quite a few very, I would say clean, but still used cars running around. And yeah, those cars with either shorty headers or long tubes with a set of Flowmasters and like an old school Mac power chamber mid pipe. Good Lord, that car sounds so good. So yeah. Let's see, Swamp is asking, did I ever street race B Mason? Thoughts on street racing? That one YouTuber got busted bad for it. Oh yeah, Paul. So, you know, we've all kind of, you know, all of us in this hobby and in this lifestyle. I mean, we all go through that phase. You know, it's like little kids going through a ninja phase, or, you know, whatever the case is. You know, all of us did. I actually, you know, sure, yeah, I actually did pretty good, as a matter of fact. Did well enough to pay for a car. But that was a long time ago when, you know, there wasn't a YouTube and there wasn't, you know, the social media that we have today. So, yeah, you know, it was, you know, but it was a different time then too. And now things, I don't know, I sound like an old man here, but there seemed to be more respect back then. And, you know, just the way that we did it, you know, we did it far away from, you know, the prying eyes of you know, the friendlies. And, you know, it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of good times back then. And, but yeah, once I started going to the drag strip, I just 100% quit doing anything on the street, because it's just not worth it. And especially at the power levels that I was getting into, it just wasn't worth it. Especially, you know, a lot of the roll racing stuff you see today, you know, these guys go from, you know, I don't know, 60 to 130 miles an hour. And I'm just going, oh, that's adorable. You know, anyway, I'll stop right there, but we used to go way higher than that. Let's see, but yeah, and I would never ever endorse any type of street racing. It's just, like I say, it's not worth it. You're putting yourself, your life, and other lives at danger. And again, I mean, the cars today are so much faster than what they used to be, and when things go wrong, they go wrong much more quickly. So take that with a grain of salt, but make sure that you're safe and careful with whatever you're doing out there. Jay Palmer, what's up, man? What's up? Let's see. Jeffrey Bender, the Enforcer, here in PA. It's freaking 20 degrees. 20 degrees, man. Good Lord, 20 degrees. I hate the cold too, man. Let's see. Where we at? Let's see. Yeah, Racer X saying definitely drive shaft first. Yeah, no kidding. I was really bummed out by that drive shaft not working out, but it was a new design, so I guess I was one of the guinea pigs. But I kind of knew that coming into it, so not hating on anybody or anything for that. Let's see. Jay Palmer saying, oh, he's talking to Racer. Let's see. Zephyr R&D. Thanks for everything, Mr. B. Mason. Right back at you, bud. Let's see. Cranman saying, B. Mason, hey, he's on the fence about lowering his Charger Scat Pack on some iBox Springs. I read let's see. Say he's read on some forums that it could reduce traction. Can't believe everything you read. My thoughts, the only thing, okay, so yeah, it can reduce traction, and the reason why is because you have an independent rear suspended car. And as you lower that car, as that suspension goes through its range of motion, keep in mind your car comes with a little bit of negative camber anyway. So that's just part of how an independent rear suspension setup works and how it works well. When you lower it, you are bringing that negative camber up just a little bit more, so you've got less contact patch right there on the ground. If you lower your car, make sure you get the rear end aligned so you bring that camber back into play. Once you do that, you're good to go. If you don't do that, then yeah, you'll jack up your contact patch and it won't hook up as well. Let's see. Jay's saying he can only go so far with the lease in terms of upgrades and mods. I'll tell you what, on a lease, I'd just keep it to tires and let it ride from there. I wouldn't throw a bunch of money into a lease ever. See, Stephen Vinoy is saying, I have 123,000 miles on a 6.1 and it's still solid. I can't break it, but it's always at the dealer for maintenance service. You know what? That's how you keep any of these cars running good for a long time. And what guys have to remember is, modern cars make so much more power than cars did, 15, 20 years ago. It's still, for guys that grew up in the era of 300 is a big number for horsepower coming from the factory, stuff that's making, 2/3 more than that from the factory and then some is just mind blowing, right? So yeah, if you're maintaining these things though, they will deliver reliability on par with any of the older engines. And they'll get better fuel economy in the process. Scat426 says he likes pulling fuse number 31 once a month to reset adapters on his car. It's a noticeable difference to me. Does it really, does it really restore the factory tune, or is it more of a placebo effect? So anytime you reset adaptives in your car, you are resetting to more or less the base setting. And as you drive the car, the adaptive strategy will basically try to, it'll not really tailor the driving experience to how you normally drive, but it does kind of soften some of the settings as you drive. It does work. And, when I reset adaptives in a car, I'm only doing that to take a look at short-term fuel trims. Basically, and to, if I'm doing like a long-term road test with it, I'll, look at long-term a little bit, but it doesn't really come into play. I'm mainly doing it to reset short-term, and that's typically after fixing an exhaust leak, which is pretty common when guys start modding exhaust. I would see cars that would come in, different shops or individuals that worked on the car that, they didn't quite take their time putting things together, and that's what'll make a car untunable is if you have an exhaust leak. So get everything fixed, reset adapters. The car always felt a little bit more snappy, but believe it or not, there is a slight amount of truth to it. But if you're asking if it's placebo or real, it's about 50-50. I think the fact that there is a little bit of a difference will make you look for the difference. And so any slight variance, you'll pick up on it. You'll be more sensitive to it. So take that with a grain of salt, but there is a slight difference, but it really is kind of 50-50 there. Let's see. Challenger Hellcat intake mod. Any recommendations? Oh, man. Intakes for the Hellcat. So I hate to say this, man. If you're going for the sound, go with the leg maker. I like the leg maker for sound on a Hellcat, but don't do it for performance. It's real difficult to beat the factory setup for performance because it does keep the inlet air charge significantly cooler than having your filter just kind of wedged in there behind the headlight. In all of the testing that I've done, on a dyno, there's not a significant difference between one intake to another until you get up into I would say until you get up around 800 horsepower to the rear wheels, you're not going to see a marketable difference. At least I haven't seen one. And that's after seeing a lot of Hellcats, and for that matter, a lot of 392s and my own testing with the 392. Just haven't seen a lot of a gain there. One of the ones that I know works in practice is the Momentum AFE, or the AFE Momentum is a good one. At least I've seen it work well enough in person, but I don't know that it's a marketable increase. I don't know that it's better than the stock setup. Best thing you can do, damn, this freaking chair, is just, keep a clean Hellcat air filter in that box and call it good. That being said, man, you can't beat the sound of the open element filters. I mean, they just sound so good. You can hear that blower wailing. So if it's for the theater, go with that leg maker. If it's for performance, yeah, the momentum is okay. The Lake Maker performs just fine. It's just during when it's hot outside, that's when those open element filters will kind of sting you a little bit. But the good news is that it's a forced induction car, and that blower is going to drag air in no matter what. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, those would be my two recommendations. Oh, damn, hold the phone. Zephyr R&D, thank you very much. Let me jump to this real quick. Man, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Wow, thank you. Um, Zephyr R&D checks in with, what setup would you do on the 6.1 Nag 1 Challenger? It's the Mrs. car, so I can't do any hot boy shit. Right on. Needs to be on 91 pump and always start and handle a lot of highway. So starting with, well, let's take a look at it kind of nose to tail here. Does she do a lot of highway driving? That's a question. Let's see. And handle a lot of highway. Ah, bummer. I was going to say this would be an expensive mod, but if you can find a one of the Gatrag 370 rear gear sets, that would be a pretty fun swap. See if you could do that without her noticing. But they're exceedingly expensive and hard to find. I would say go with larger throttle body for, and this would be a fast man, larger throttle body for throttle response. I would do cat back ditch, which will ditch a little bit of weight on that car and will also make it sound nice. And that one is kind of pick your poison. I like MagnaFlow quite a bit. It's a little bit more subtle than some of the other ones, and they perform exceptionally well. From there, I would say a tune and a transmission tune would take you pretty far with that car. But aside from that, I wouldn't get too crazy with it, mainly because, man, that car is already very well sorted from the factory. Definitely don't need long tubes on that car, and really with just a little bit of a trans tune, a little bit of a tweak here and there on the engine tune, I think you'd have a car that was not only a lot of fun, but it would sound good and really set it apart. I know that would be about as far as I would take my wife's, car. If I were building one for my wife, that's basically what I would do, because all she wants to do is smoke the tires and make a lot of noise. So we'll see how that winds up. If I can talk her into letting me buy her an older Challenger, but at any rate, I would probably leave it at that, though. Again, just because there's only so much that you really can do to those cars to extract a bunch of power without really affecting long-term durability and drivability, things like that. So, and I would stay the heck away from forced induction. But thank you again. I really do appreciate that. Let's see. D-Mob checking in with, hey, brother, would you choose a 2011 C6 Grand Sport or a 2014 Challenger SRT8, both auto? Damn, that's a pretty interesting one. So the 14 was the last year of the old, I say old, with the first gen re-release of the Challenger. It was the last year of that. So the interior is kind of like version 1.5, but I actually really like that interior. But it is still a Nag 1 car. So, and I don't know, I got to tell you, it depends on what you want to do with the car. The C6 Grand Sport is, kind of a staple in, in terms of performance and making power. I mean, you can always get that thing to basically whatever power level you feel like you want to get to. But the problem is you're always going to be sacrificing power down low. And it just depends on how much cam you can actually live with. So if it's my money being spent, depends on how far you want to get into that vet. But, you're going to have probably more success if you want to mod it with the vet. But I think the Mopar will be a little bit better all the way around. I think it'll be a bit more fun. Hey, God damn, give it a rest. All right. Let's see. Mike, what is it? Mike L09 asking, Hellcat drive shaft upgrade necessary with drag radials. Not for the street, it's not, no. But if you're going to be taking the car to the drag strip often, and if you're going to be launching that car hard, I would say it's a good idea. I'm not going to say that and this is not to say that the stock drive shaft is just going to turn itself into pasta right there in front of you the first time you launch the car. It's kind of a weird deal. There were very few of the stock Hellcats that were twisting up drive shafts, but there were quite a few mildly modded Hellcats that were wadding those things up. So they got a bad rap for being bad, but these are guys that are launching their car hard at the drag strip. I'm not talking about like 1,200 or 1,300 RPM launches. These guys were, foot braking these cars up to about 2,000 RPM and just bonsai launching them, and actually even higher than that in some cases. So if your car's on the street and you're running it around, just having fun with it, even on drag radials, I wouldn't sweat it too much. If you're going to be taking it to the track, often enough to where people on a first name basis at the drag strip and they know yours, you definitely want to put a different drive shaft in there. Let's see. Symphonic says, I want street race over 80 miles an hour. However, I will give you a great 0 to 80 getting on the ramp. You and me both, brother. Jay Palm is saying, throw them thumbs up. Yeah, let's get some thumbs up going on over here, man. I know that's supposed to do something, so yeah, it's up somewhere. I don't even know where it is, but yeah, hit the thumbs up, I guess. I'm watching. Oh, damn. Midwest Mopar is saying it's 10 degrees in Wisconsin. 10? Damn, that's almost no degrees. Any colder than that, there just won't be a temperature. Jay Palma says, Hellcat 5 spokes are on, and I noticed that negative camber just barely. Yep. Didn't lower it, just swapped wheels and tires. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Once you get to looking at it, you'll see, you'll see where, I think it's 1.5 degrees. So it's just about like that. But again, when you launch the car and the suspension does squat, you do lose some of that contact patch. That's why you'll get into wheel hop, because the coefficient of friction of the tire is changing because you're reducing your footprint, and you'll have traction. And then as that suspension starts to flex, you'll lose traction. So as you lose traction, you lose acceleration. The suspension basically will come back up because you're losing G forces, and then it'll hook. But then it may break loose, and as it's breaking loose, because that's why you get that. That's why independent suspensions do that. So definitely get it realigned when you get done. Racer X, stock intake box still works. Yeah, I would say it does. Yeah, for you guys wondering about stock intake boxes, Racer X still runs his stock intake box, and that is a mid 9-second car making about 1,000 horsepower to the crank. So yeah, I would say it works great. Let's see. Stephen Vinoy, Angala. Wait, am I reading that right? Angala? Anyway, it's 18 degrees out there. Damn. That's too damn cold. I couldn't. How do y'all? Why? Damn, that is just freezing. That's more than freezing cold. Joe T, what up, B Mason? What up, Joe T? What's up? Jacob Luna checking in with a what's up to everybody. Let's see. Stole it again, coming in with 2009 Charger Pursuit 5.7, 298,000 miles. I like it. Cold air catch can and a custom tune. Got a Johan tune. Nice. Running it on Mobile One. Says he's dropping 1320s at 107. I like it. 0 to 60 at 4.6 seconds. Those things do run good. Still rocking his 265 diff. Put down 348 and 398 on a Mustang dyno. That's a real good number for that car. Typically, those cars with a mild cam will lay down 368, 378. Depends on the cam and how much of the bottom end torque they decided to kill with that cam. Let's see. Does the 5.7 box fit the Hellcat filter? Absolutely it does. Let's see. Aiden L asks 2.3 Edelbrock for 5.7, 8 to 10 pounds of boost. They were good. I have absolutely nothing wrong with the E-Force blowers. They're kind of a set it and forget it kind of a platform. And nothing against them. I will say this though, the tune, the tune with the E-Force is, to say it's conservative is an understatement. In fact, I'll go so far as to say the tune with the E-Force supercharger is a little bit over the top with how conservative it is. There is a pretty decent amount of power left on the table. I put it to you like this. The last E-Force that I saw on the dyno, when we were done with it, it was making the same horsepower as my 392 to the rear wheels with a little bit of a bump in torque. But before the tune, I want to say it was making, God, it made, on that dyno, it made like 430 and 450 torque. And I want to say that before the tune, it was like 398 or something like that. It was real low. So yeah, definitely a good setup, but I would look into, setting that up with a different tune. Stephen Kennedy saying beep, beep. Hey guys, what's up, Stephen? Jay Puma letting us know there are 35 watching and only 14 thumbs up. Man, that is killing me. Let's see. Stolen again asking B Mason, roughly how many RPM increase would I have cruising speed if I switch from a 265 to a 355? Well, easiest way to do that is to find out the percentage difference between 2.65 and 3.55, and then factoring that into your RPM, and that will give you your percentage gain. So I don't have a calculator here, but hey, somebody divide 2.65 divided by 3.55. Give me that answer, and I will tell you exactly how many RPM it'll go up. Let's see. Scat426, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Happy to answer your questions. Even happier when I get paid to do it. So yeah, thank you though. Thank you very much for that. Let's see. Phoenix checking in with the confirmation that yes, the Hellcat filter will fit in the 5.7 box. It's a good filter, by the way. That filter will outflow pretty much any aftermarket filter on the market. Just so you guys know, it is the absolute best filter you can run with your 5.7, your 6.4, and really your Hellcat. I mean, I hate to tell you this, guys, but that filter flows its ass off. Let's see. Let's see. D-Mob saying, oh, is playing for the car, whether a C6 Grand Sport or an SRT Challenger, be almost daily driving and modifying the car, bolt-ons and a cam eventually. Man, I tell you what, the problem, here's the problem with the C6. And God, I hate to say this, man, especially if you're running an automatic with that car. You will find pretty quickly that if you're running an automatic with a C6 and you have screwed up with your camshaft choice, you will pretty much ruin the driving experience with that car. The good news is that there are a ton of camshaft grinders available that will tell you that their cam is the best. I happen to know that Texas Speed Stage 1 cam is really good for the LS, any of the LS platforms with an automatic transmission. Don't get greedy when it comes to camshafts. The problem with camshafts with LS engines is that they don't care. It's a wedge engine, and the wedges just don't care. They will take whatever amount of cam you want to throw at it because they have a great intake manifold to work with. The problem is that the trade-off is very real. I mean, it is the poster boy for lose torque, pick up horsepower. And so go the Stage 1 once you decide to get the cam. Go the set of Cooks, long tube headers, spend the money. It's well worth it. But trust me on this. Please, you will thank me for this. And if you're doing your own install, you'll double thank me for it when you do the install on the headers. But that's really the direction I would go with that car. I think that if that's the case and that's what you're looking to do with the thing, I think you might be a little bit happier with the Vet, especially if you're considering that car by comparison, depending on how much you want to, you know, depending on how much you want to actually put into the car, because you got to remember, you start modding Hemis, you're going to be paying Mopar tax. That can sting you. So anytime mods are going to be in the future and you want to have something that is not only daily drivable, but also gets solid fuel economy, that's going to be real hard to beat. Got a bunch of thumbs up. Stole it again. Woo! Gotcha. Scat 426. Right back at you. Stephen Kennedy. Absolutely. Hondo says snowing in North Carolina. Damn, you know what's funny? We got a little bit of snow here in Houston early part of November. Now, when I say snow, we had flurries. You know, it was one of these deals where we just had a little bit of flurries fluttering around in the air. You'd have thought it was a second coming, man. Everybody freaking out about that. Let's see. Gorilla Toys asking, what mods can I do to a Jeep 5.7 Hemi? Same mods you can do to any 5.7 Hemi. Tune, trans tune, do a catback and a set of headers. You put headers on it, you're going to have to put a tune on it, but throw a catback on it, throw a tune on it, and I think you'll be in good shape. Let's see. Mike, let's see. Michael Ed, I can't, man, it's too many consonants here. Saying, thanks for answering questions. Yeah, absolutely. Says he's new to the Mopar community and really appreciates having someone like me to learn from. Well, I do appreciate the kind words very much. I always try to give the best advice I can. Don't want to steer anybody wrong. You know, one of the issues and one of the reasons why I started doing what I do and putting this channel together is that so many aftermarket manufacturers, there's so much horseshit that you will be fed about what kind of horsepower gains you can get, what type of, you know, you name it. It could be anything, but there's a lot of hype. And I try to, you know, use my experience with working with these things and, you know, being at the drag strip as often as I am and, you know, my experience working at the shop to try to get you guys a little bit of a real world scenario, you know, what really does work, what doesn't work, you know, where to spend your money wisely and where you can make better use of the stock components, which are very well engineered to begin with. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Welcome aboard. Al's Dream says his Hellcat got stolen 2 days ago and they stripped everything. Oh, shit. That sucks, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Definitely hate to hear that. Well, hopefully insurance covers you on that. Damn, I really hate to hear about guys getting their cars stolen. Zephyr R&D says the 6.1 currently has Mopar, Magnaflow, catback. That's basically about right. Been straight pipe, Mopar intake with K&N. Need to drive to H-Tex to have us tune it. I'm curious about lowering the temps in the 6.1. Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you haven't already done it, a 180 thermostat can help. You know, every little bit helps when it comes to engine heat. You just need to be able to adjust the fans accordingly so that you take advantage of that 180-degree thermostat. But yeah, you know, like I say, taking it any farther than that is going to potentially put you in a situation where you're spending money, but you're not really getting a whole lot of gain out of it. So let's see. Got some guys hanging out over here. Let's see. Zephyr R&D saying, appreciate everything once more. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Stole it again, saying at Al, it sucks and it wasn't me. Nah, that sucks. Fast Man, what's up? Woo! Let's see. Jay, what is 7464? Oh, there we go. He did the calculation. So yeah, you would be spending basically 26%. Wait a minute, that can't be right. Where are we comparing here? I'm scrolling back through here. Time out. Oh yeah, 265 to a 355. I guess it would be about 25%. Yeah, you're going to be spending quite a bit higher going from 265 to 355. about 500 RPM, give or take. Let's see. Oh, I blew past it. Hang on. Jay Palmer, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Project Revlon, she's rocking strong. Yeah, we just need to get that drive shaft back. That's for sure. Yeah, that's killing me right now, man. It's definitely need to get that drive shaft back so we can get you guys some hard launches at the drag strip for the track event. So definitely looking for that. Toby Rama asking, why is it that straight axle rear ends are so praised over the in drag racing when they are the most prone to axle wrap and I see what you're saying, axle wrap and wheel hop. The reason why you can quell axle wrap and wheel hop and all that with suspension modifications, the reason why straight axles are preferred is because there's no deflection individually at the wheel. When a solid rear axle, when the suspension squats, the solid rear axle stays solidly planted to the ground with no change in camber at the rear wheel. So the car sits down, axle stays planted, tire stays flat, contact patch is maintained the entire range of the suspension movement, and therefore traction is maintained throughout the suspension movement. With the correct shocks and with the correct bushings, actually solid rear axle cars can handle real well. So, I would say that you're probably if you're to do a rear, like a solid rear axle swap in a Challenger, it would be kind of a waste of time, but you're probably going to be in some cases reducing weight with a solid rear axle over the independent rear too. So just something to consider. But yeah, just getting back over to Jay Poma's deal. Thanks. Buying a Hellcat filter tonight. I tell you what, that they're tough to beat. I mean, they flow, I forget what the exact number was, over 1,000 CFM, which is something that you can't really beat. I mean, it's 1,000 CFM. Plenty of guys are making a ton of power with that setup. And whether you're NA or you've got a Hellcat, I haven't seen a huge benefit from running, some of these aftermarket intakes. Now, you start making a ton of power, it might be worth it at that point. But I mean, we're talking 15 or 20 horsepower ish here. I don't know. It's just tough to justify the expense. Joe T saying he took a 300 Emmy for a test drive today. Can't say I didn't laugh like a little girl. Dude, I'll tell you what, they are a lot of fun, especially when you consider the fact how big they are. They're surprisingly quick for a car that weighs as much as they do. And that's even with the Nag 1. Those things are good running cars. Jay Puma at Joe T. Are you in the damn group on Facebook? Y'all going to have to talk about that. I don't know what that is. See, Patrick Stevens, what's the source of my knowledge? Well, I've been doing hot rod stuff basically since I was old enough to turn a wrench. I've worked at a couple of different shops over the years, and I have been doing my own work on cars again since I had a driver's license. So I've been racing either cars or motorcycles my entire life. And honestly, I can't remember a time when I wasn't racing something now that I think about it. Family has a background in racing in one way, shape, or form, whether on the street or on, my grandfather raced NASCAR or stock cars before it was actually called NASCAR. So yeah, a little bit of everything, man. A lot like you guys, a lot of on-the-job training. Let's see, Stoll again, running a 180 thermostat. That's the way to do it. Let's see. Phoenix 98 saying, awesome Mason speaking of hot rod truth. For reals. Toby Rom is asking, for his truck, what cam grind should he go with for a big lope that is still bearable day to day? I'm going with the 5.9 Magnum. Off the top of my head, I don't know of one specific to the 5.9, but I would say go with something Just off the top of my head, I would say probably somewhere around 5'10", 5.25 lift on the intake and exhaust, probably 112-ish degrees of duration. I can't remember. That is not a mass air vehicle, so it's going to be kind of difficult to tune that, Cam. So let me bump that out to about 114.5 degrees lobe separation angle. Duration on the intake side about 218, on the exhaust about 226, something along those lines. Intake center line at 108 degrees would be one that I would put together for that truck, give or take. Of course, depending on your tuning capabilities as well. D-Mob saying, thank you, brother. I'm leaning towards the C6 Grand Sport for now. By the way, it's a really nice car. If you haven't had a chance to drive, guys, one of the older Grand Sport cars, they're still one of the best cars out there. He's saying with a Haltech cold air, Texas speed headers with X-pipe or Cook's long tube headers, stock catback with NPP exhaust, Texas speed cam package. Can't go wrong with that. Would absolutely advise going with Cook's over the Texas speed headers. That's more of a fitment issue than anything else. The Cook's are a little bit shorter in primary length, but the fitment is well worth it. Joe T is saying, oh, Detroit area Mopar, Detroit area modern Mopar. Oh, cool. I need to check that out. Stole again saying, thanks, B Mason. Love the channel. Thank you for being a part of it, my friend. Stole it again. Nothing but thumbs. J Poma saying, no problem. Let's see. Mopar, Endless Combo says, Mopar strut tire braces for 2019 wide body Scat. Going to make a difference? Actually, I know a guy that's got the strut tire braces on his Hellcat, and tells me that the car does feel more planted. He's actually gone and put strut tower brace, the rear brace, and the subframes on his car. But before that, in his Challenger, he had the strut tower brace and the rear brace. Said he actually liked it a lot. So definitely something that you would consider. It's not going to hurt anything, that's for sure. But he said it did make it feel a little bit more planted. I never, obviously I never lived with one with those mods, so can't really speak to it myself, but he seems to like it. Jane Poma says, what does NAG1 stand for? NAG1 is the 5-speed automatic that came in the, it started off life, it's a Mercedes-Benz transmission, or Mercedes-Benz derived. It was used in the S500, S550, E55, and was the transmission that they used before they put the 7-speed into the E63 with the M156 V8. What does it stand for? It's a great question. I've always just known it as the NAG1 and left it at that. But they're actually a very robust transmission. And truth be told, they're a lot of guys will fault them when you compare it to the 8-speed, but that's really not fair to the NAG1s because the 8-speed is just really that good. But the NAG1s, I've seen the NAG1s handle a lot of power stock. So, and there's a lot of folks that have had them built, and the NAG1, when they're built, can also be a little bit, I don't know if it, I don't really want to say it shifts necessarily better than the 8-speed, but it can be right there on point with it. But there is also aftermarket support for the NAG1 in a way that there's not the same amount of support for the 8-speed. Zephyr R&D saying, if I did the diff swap, I'm guessing that the RPM at 80 would be about 2,800 to 3,000 RPM. Would that kill the motor in mile per gallon? It won't really hurt the engine too much, but yeah, you'll wreck the mile per gallon. But yeah, you're looking at about 2,800. I know with a 390, 80 is 80 miles an hour is roughly 3,000 RPM. So it's a little bit aggressive going down the freeway for sure. It's just one of those things. It's a personal preference. Not a lot of highway time, mainly just taking it out, playing with it, taking it to the drag strip. It would be good. I don't know, depending on the setup, depending on the weight of the car and the weight of the wheel and tire combination you're going to be running and all of that stuff. The 390 can be a good unit to run, but yeah, 370 would probably be about as aggressive as I would go. And You got to remember, I mean, we were running 373s back in the day with 067 final drive or final trans ratios, and you ran those around all day long and didn't really have too much of a problem. So it's not going to hurt the motor. Excuse me. Patrick Stevens saying thanks. Well, thank you very much. Stole again, nag one equals ex-wife. No, ex-wives don't nag you. It's the ones that you got that nag you. Abel Salazar, thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Let's see. J Pum was laughing. Michael Oveen. Oh, I'm just going to say, Mike, used Hellcat shopping. What to look for, what to avoid. First thing to look for is look for any modifications that have been done to the car. Look for signs that the car may have been modified in the past and was put back to stock. Those are cars you want to avoid. You want to get the cleanest, most stock version of a Hellcat that you can find. Obviously, check the oil, make sure it's got fresh oil in it, make sure it's not running low on oil. Look at the core support, look in the trunk, make sure it hasn't been wrecked, look for signs of body damage, little things like that. Now, that being said, gotta say all of that. That being said, don't be blown away by the fact that the fit and finish of body panels is not that great. That's not a sign that it was wrecked. That's a sign that it's a Dodge. So I've gone through on both of my cars and have fixed little things, but my car, my SRT was so jacked up from the factory. And my Hellcat has got some paint blemishes on it as well. Sometimes I wonder how these things actually made it through R&D or whatever, or QC, I should say. But yeah, that's kind of a thing. But, like I say, that being said, I would, as long as it's a clean version, or clean example of the car, and there's no, there's nothing about the car that would indicate that it had been ragged on. The Hellcats are actually very robust. Get behind the fender wells on the rear of the car. Make sure that it's not caked up full of rubber. If the guy was taking it to the drag strip and not taking care of his car, I'm not worried about anybody taking their car to the drag strip. I'm just saying, when you get done running it, clean it up, go through it, check the oil, check your fluids, do all of that stuff. Typically, those guys, if he's cleaning up the rubber out of the fender well, he's looking at other things too, just a sign of good housekeeping. So that's some stuff to check out. Stephen Kennedy, don't buy a stolen one. Yeah, no kidding. Let's see. Endless Combo saying, thanks for the info. You got it. Hashtag Miata killer, Miata eater if you can catch it. Stolen again saying, Nag 1 is bulletproof. Cops still run them. Yes, they do, by the way. And they do run them because they are so robust. It says, mine's never been opened up other than fluid and filter change with right at 300,000 miles. Let's see. My brother-in-law is checking in, Tony, saying, my little sis wants to know when she gets to ride in Revlon, it'll seal the deal on him getting his Hellcat. Let's see. I would, it's whenever. Actually, I thought I was going to give y'all a ride in it when I was there for Pop's birthday. Let's see. Abel Salazar saying his question got skipped. Where'd your question go, man? This has been happening a couple of times. Abel Salazar, I got the contribution, but I didn't get a question. Did you add a question to that, brother? Where'd you go? What happened? Well, damn, man, post it up. I will definitely answer it. I just got the contribution, didn't see it. So post up the question again, man. Toby Rama asking, what wheel should I go with on my truck for a nice muscle car look? I was thinking of going with the American Racing Torque Thrust M's or Torque Thrust 2s. You can never go wrong with Torque Thrust, man. There's a definite plus to the Torque Thrust. Always looks good, old school. Yeah, man, like I say, guys, it's I don't remember what I opened the show with, because baby boy over here, who is absolutely conked out, Torque is his name. Anyway, but getting back to it, one of the things that I was talking about 392s, that ringland being so so high up on the piston. Again, it's engineered like that for efficiency, for an NA combo, not really the best for boosted. There's plenty of guys that have gotten away with running boost with stock 392s. It's just, you know, how much power do you really want to make? How much of an investment do you want to put into fuel systems? What type of fuel do you want to run? All of that can make a difference. And of course, when you're running with a fuel that has has tendencies of being as wishy-washy as 93 octane does, you just got to be on the lookout for stuff like that. So, and mainly that's a fuel quality issue, not a not a tuning issue too. And even that being said, I have actually seen 392s, or at least a 392, fail on the dyno bone stock. I mean, it literally blew up on the dyno for no reason, no apparent reason, and the only thing we could think of, fuel quality. So that's why. Let's see. Jay Poma, with no mods on a stock 5.7, is a catch can needed? You know, I won't ever say you need a catch can. I will say that it's a good idea to run a catch can. Just remember though, with a catch can, you've got to make sure you change or drain that catch can regularly. I would say at most once a month, depending on how much you're driving, but you need to be draining that thing. What can happen is you got to remember that that is part of a closed circuit. And as the intake is drawing air through the catch can and into the intake, it's going to be stirring up any fluid that's in that reservoir. What you don't want to have happen is you don't want to start sucking or drawing any of that fluid into your intake manifold. So basically you will have gone from keeping some of your crankcase vapors, whether it's oil vapors or moisture condensation, things of that nature, as opposed to isolating it, you'll actually start to reintroduce it at a much higher rate. So not necessary, but definitely recommended, provided that you're going to stay on top of maintenance. Let's see, Symphonics. Are the Cook's headers really worth 3 times the price of the TSP headers? Is fitment the only reason? I really like Cook's headers for the fitment, but if we're looking at it from a power standpoint, it's really not going to necessarily yield you more power. But they are a better design, and they are, in terms of fitment, much better. So take that with a grain of salt, though. I have had some fitment issues with the TSP headers in the past. It's not to say that all of them are bad, but on the Vets, I did see a set and they were super tight. In fact, it was one of those things where it was such a pain in the ass trying to get them to fit. But you would take the Cook's header and you could throw it at the car and it would fit just perfectly. So just something to consider. Let's see. Yeah, but fitment is really the only reason. Like I say, in terms of outright performance, not a huge difference. The TSP headers had a primary length about that much longer. And actually, for that, I don't really fault that header too much in that respect, because it would help in assisting the car to build a little bit more partial throttle power, which you guys know that's kind of a big deal for me. And if you're putting a cam in the car, you need every ounce of that you can reclaim. So by that standard, they do work really well. But again, it was just a fitment thing. That set of headers really got underneath my skin, if you can't tell. And then Stoll again saying, yes, Jay, catch can on every Hemi. Some guys are wondering why they didn't come stock with it. One of the cars that was even worse than that were the LS2s had significant oil consumption problems. Guys were running the catch cans on those just to quell it. Let's see. Abel Salazar checks in with, I've got a 2018 Scat Pack shaker and thinking of putting a supercharger on it. What would you recommend for him to get to without losing his shaker hood besides the Pro Charger? You could, as far as I'm guessing you mean lose the shaker head in terms of functionability, I would stick with the Pro Charger on that. You might be able to make it work with the with a Whipple. I think you would probably like a Whipple more on that car than you would a Pro Charger, at least in my opinion, because with the Whipple you would get an initial hit, whereas the Pro Charger makes a good number on the dyno, but that number doesn't necessarily translate into driving, like a driving impression. In that you don't feel the power until the very top of the power band. So you just kind of, it's a very linear and progressive, basically input of power, which is actually a little bit better for your transmission. So if you're going to go with a Pro Charger or go with any supercharger, I would say Whipple, and then very closely followed by a Pro Charger. Pro Charger cars are actually a lot of fun to drive. Let's see. Donald Power saying, I love 390 gears because they pull like crazy the rest of the way down the track. I'll tell you what, yeah, I mean, they just keep, you got better torque multiplication, so it is going to keep pulling all the way towards the end of the track. Again, the downside is just, those things buzz all day long on the freeway. Let's see. And Abel was talking about, he's got a 6.4. Like I say, man, if it's my car, I would probably, God, it's tough to say because you got the HP 70 in that car. And really for the, I'll tell you what, I'm going to reel that one back in. I'd say for the sake of the transmission, stick with the Pro Charger on that one. Go like a D1 and use the race intercooler. I think you'll be in good shape. Make some pretty decent power out of it too. Make around 550 to the rear wheels on a Mustang dyno. Will definitely wake that car up quite a bit. And again, if you're running the thing around on, drag radials on the street or, like a sticky summer tire, you won't have to worry about that transmission too much. Those tires will start spinning before the transmission has a chance to overload. Still again saying everyone's top ticket received. I don't even want to talk about that. Let's put you like this. I used to have a license. Well, I'm not even going to tell you that either. Never mind. Sorry. Zephyr RD saying, I love this, Mason. Well, thank you very much. He's asking, have you heard of BC Moto? He has an auto engineering firm in SoCal and does a similar thing as this. I've learned a lot from you and him this year. No, I haven't, but I will check it out. I appreciate that. I need to check out his show. Let's see. See, Stolen again saying they should, but too many people don't even change your oil, let alone drain to catch can. Yeah, that's one of the things where you just got to stay on top of it. If you're going to have a catch can, you've absolutely got to maintain that part, because if not, again, consequences can be worse. Let's see. Jay Poma asking, is there a Mopar catch can for the 5.7? I'm not aware of an actual Mopar part for that catch can option, but let's see. The Billet Technologies, I know, makes one, which is the one that I had on my truck. Actually, thought I had that one sitting over here on the workbench. And I don't. That one is, I'd say Billet Technology is your best way to go for a catch can on the 5.7. Let's see. Got y'all chatting here in the background. Let's see. Patrick Stevens, kudos on the Mopar engineers. Yeah, no kidding. They did a good job. Let's see. Joe T, there's a guy named 392_stroke_RT with a crazy 2016 Charger RT. He has a 5.7 stroke to 392 with a Pro Charger. I think he ran 570 to the wheels with, I believe, only 91 octane. It's definitely a build to see. Be careful what you're looking at when you're looking at horsepower numbers. Make sure that we're all talking the same. In fact, I'm wearing my Mustang Dyno t-shirt. Make sure we're all talking about the same type of measuring device. But whether it's 750 or 650 to the rear wheels, it doesn't matter. It's still a lot of power. you can actually get good numbers out of uh, any of these cars on boost. My only reservation there is, does that number translate into a driving experience? And I think where a lot of guys get it wrong is that, you hear that you picked up 200 horsepower and you expect it to be this completely different driving experience than what you had before. And what a lot of guys find out is that it is more power, but when you're already starting off with an engine that's making a significant amount of power, and I'm mainly talking about 392 cars here. I get that he stroked a 5.7 to 392, but still, the principle basically is still the same. You find out that difference is not as night and day as you might have thought it was going to be. So, but I definitely like looking at those builds. I like looking at what guys are doing a little bit differently. One thing that I like about what you're talking about with the 392 stroked RT is that he did go 5.7 to 392 stroker. I do actually like the small bore 392 setup, and I'm actually kind of surprised we don't see more of those, because it's a very efficient layout. They make really good torque, and they work very well with a supercharger because the flame front is just, has less distance to go. So I've actually been kind of a big fan of that combination, and I'm glad he's making good power with it, because, man, I wouldn't mind doing that setup on a 5.7. Do the small bore 392. Let's see, Track Pack RT. What's going on, B Mason? What's going on, Track Pack? Let's see. He says, best way to cure wheel hop on a manual 5.7. Is it a hop knot kit the best bet? I tell you what, if you can find one that is comprehensive, I would say go for it. But rear diff brace, BMR or Spawn lower trailing arms, I don't know that going the full kit is all that necessary, but those two mods alone are mods you can do in your driveway and will help to bring it down a peg or two. I think BMR has either released it or is working on a bushing kit for the LX platform. So just keep an eye out on that. That would replace the center bushing, the rubber center bushing, with a more solid piece. There's some inserts, because the center bushing is it's got like the star thing going on. There's a company that has, it might be BMR that's working on this, that has inserts that go in there that help take up that room. I've also heard of guys injecting silicone into that. I don't think I would ever recommend that, but I don't know how silicone would react with the rubber that's in there. So if you hear about that, I would definitely kind of shy away from it. But something along the lines of an insert on those bushings could potentially help as well, but just a full bushing replacement would be better. Stole again at Joe. Damn. Let's see. They're talking about you went with billet. Let's see. W. Rama asking, why is it that fleet vehicles are downgraded from the consumer versions? An example of this is the 6.7 Power Stroke, where the fleet motor has 80 horsepower down on the consumer one. A lot of that has to do with, they will detune them based on fuel quality concerns. Many of those trucks are potentially using a lower grade of diesel, and you don't want to be spooling the boost up too much when you're running a lower grade of diesel. And also, a lot of those trucks are run real hard and run at wide open throttle for long periods of time. If you're towing with them, dragging heavy equipment around, you're on job sites, it's muddy, trying to get that thing around, they're going to be beating on those things a lot harder than a normal consumer will. And I mean a lot harder. If you've never been around a job site, especially a large active job site where you're dragging a lot of equipment around, those trucks get absolutely worked. So that's one of the reasons why. Let's see. Phoenix 98 saying, can't say Texas speed long tubes, but for Cooks on his lowered F body, rarely scrapes them with them, and they tug nice to the body. Yeah, like I say, the the cooks are just such a nice piece, but they are good. Joe T checking in with, oh, my mistake. Just checked 650 to the wheels on 91 octane, which is still very good. He's talking about a supercharged small bore 392, which is where you take a 5.7 and stroke it to 392. Yeah, 650 to the rear wheels is still good on 91 octane. I'm assuming that's on a dyno jet. In fact, I can guarantee you that's on a dyno jet. Real world number on that from a Mustang dyno point of view is probably going to be 550, 570 ish. It just depends on how, what's the best way I can put this? Nice that dyno was being, how generous that dyno was being. But, realistically, when you start to look at, again, it's the horsepower numbers, and we all get caught up in that horsepower war. I'm pretty sure that, that car is going to be a lot of fun to drive. And it's definitely an upgrade in terms of power from where he was before. But yeah, I'd like to see what kind of numbers that car would run at the drag strip. Abel Salazar saying, thanks for the info. His first muscle car. He loves driving it now. Would like a little bit more out of it. Awesome info. Thank you very much. Appreciate you checking in. Let's see. Jay Puma said, yeah, he had heard about the billet technologies. I mean, like I say, right now, that's the only company that's really supporting it. It's a good enough catch can. Obviously, we'd all like to have a little bit better. You can always run catch cans in series and stuff like that. But just keep this in mind. Whenever you're talking about a catch can, you're only catching a percentage or a portion of the vapors that are running through, that system. It's basically you've got a, on the facing side, basically running into the manifold, you'll have, your can, which is just a nucleation site for the vapors to come out of suspension to collect on so they drip into the container. And then, keeping the high side hose, you don't have a hose at the bottom, you have the other high side hose going into the intake manifold. There's only so much of the atomized liquids that you can pull out of atomization, have them nucleate and drop. Some of that will still roll through and get into the engine. And again, it's not uncommon to pull an intake manifold off of a car with a catch can and still see some pooling, little bit of oil on the intake valve where it'll just kind of drip down the short side or the long side of the runners. Actually, technically be the short side. But anyway, you do mitigate it to a certain extent, but it's not a complete and total solution. And it's not like it's that big of a deal. I mean, we're not talking about a huge amount of oil being introduced in the cylinders. And again, this is kind of where the hype train, starts to blow its whistle. By their accounts, I mean, you're introducing this vapor of oil like it's oil injection, like a two-stroke. It's nothing like that. Out of, say, 3,000 miles, you may have a few ounces of fluid in there. You probably had at least a few ounces go through the engine. So, if you're running good quality fuel and you've got a catch can, you've got absolutely nothing to worry about as far as octane degradation. And if you're running without a catch can, I still would always recommend one. I haven't put one on the Hellcat yet, but it is coming. I would just, highly suggest making sure you stick with the maintenance on that thing, because it can be a bear if you don't. Let's see. Toby Ramos saying, if you're interested in hot rods, you should check out Car Warriors. It's with Jimmy Shine of SoCal Customs. I'll check it out. Zephyr R&D. Ever made or heard a modern Hemi that's dry sump? No, I haven't. Listen to, looks like he thinks it's Steve Dinan, BMW tuner, about using the dry sump to decrease the air pressure on the bottom of the piston. I've never heard of anybody dry sumping one of these Hemis. It'd be an interesting exercise if they did, and if they ever put one in a Viper, wink, wink, be on the lookout for that. It might be a dry sump. Dominique S. Getting home from the bar crew checking in. I like it. Let's see. Stole it again, saying B. I've had great success with MCCC. Do you use it? And your thoughts on it? No, I don't. Don't even know what that is. Fill me in. Let's see. Jay Palma, there's a difference between Mustang dynos and other dynos? Yeah, there is. There's a big difference. So Mustang dyno is an eddy current dyno, and what that means is that you're converting the rotational energy into electrical energy, taking that resistance and converting it to torque, and then deriving horsepower from it. Where as opposed to an inertia style dyno, which takes a known amount of weight, measures that weight's acceleration, and then derives horsepower and torque from just the inertia, spinning this big weight up to a certain speed, which would be peak RPM. The typical difference between an inertia style dyno, which is basically a dyno jet, and a Mustang dyno, which is an eddy current dyno, is usually around 10%. So if an engine makes 100 horsepower to the rear wheels on an eddy current dyno, you would expect it to make 90% of that number, 110% of that number on an inertia style dyno. So basically, it's all in how the calculation of generating horsepower works. Now, that's how they generate, or that's how they operate, just the mechanics of them. The difference is with a Mustang dyno, you can actually load the dyno. In fact, that's part of the reason why it's the preferred dyno for a tuning shop, is because you can load a specific amount of weight in terms of resistance into that roller to where it doesn't just free spin. It's actually creating resistance for the vehicle to push against, whereas and it's obviously adjustable, as opposed to an inertia style, which again is just measuring the acceleration rate of a known amount of weight on a drum. And the reason why that's important is you can tune partial throttle, full load. In other words, on a Mustang dyno, you can load in 6,500 pounds worth of load if you're dynoing a big truck, and tuning that big truck, because it has different weight factors that it has to drag around. It has also, you can program resistance for wind resistance as well into that Mustang dyno. So you're tuning against actual weight, you're tuning against actual wind resistance figures that allow you to actually fine tune the engine. Whereas an inertial style dyno doesn't care if it's a Mack truck or a go-kart. It just knows how fast that thing's being spooled up. And so if you're trying to tune on that type of a dyno, it's more difficult to actually get it just right. In fact, it's impossible, because you can't replicate the weight or the wind resistance. So that's the difference between the dynos. Which do I prefer? Well, obviously Mustang dyno, I'm wearing their shirt, but the old inertia style dynos are good for just getting an outright horsepower number. But again, they're always going to read higher. And again, it's typically going to be about 10%. Let's see. Joe T saying, and B Mason, you're definitely right about the enjoyment. I agree with you on that. Thank you very much. Yep. Got to have fun with it. No sense spending money if you're not having fun with it. Toby Rama asks, say you have 500 brake horsepower. Is it possible to get close to that number in wheel horsepower, or exactly that number? Yeah, you can get kind of close. In older cars, it's a lot easier, basically because the cylinder heads didn't flow as much. Camshafts were much less aggressive than modern vehicles. If you're talking about, an older wedge head, yeah, I mean, you can get fairly close, but the old idea was to try to get to a point where you made the same wheel horsepower as you did advertised brake horsepower in this case. And so you can do it. It's definitely going to take a cam, heads, and an intake, though, to get there. Let's see. Still again, Mopar combustion chamber cleaner. Yeah, I think you're talking about the. Let's see. Looks like you're talking about the. Sorry, I got distracted there. The foam. Stole it again. B, look at my avatar. I can barely see it. Looks like it says stole it. Okay, cool. I dig it. Oh, hang on. We got one more checking in, y'all. Except for R&D saying, I'm brushing up on fluid dynamics and ran across some interesting data about viscosity modifiers and something like 040 oil breaking down faster than something like 1040. Are my thoughts on that? Realistically, with modern oil, you're not going to see too much of an issue with viscosity degradation over time. There are some oils that do better than others, but most of the 040s are actually pretty robust, whether it's the Pennzoil, Amsoil, or the Mobil 1. There are a couple of specialty oil manufacturers that do make a 540 and a 1040. The reality, though, is when you start to measure the wear at 0 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius flow rates, you'll find that they're all really good. All of the modern synthetic fluids do a fantastic job at doing what they were designed to do. I don't know that, you're going to see a breakdown necessarily in the 040s that would ever cause you to be concerned with the performance of that product. And again, when it comes to oil and the dynamics of, how the oil one versus another, guys, keep in mind that as with most industries, it is an incredibly incestuous business. The oil industry is. There's guys that work at Mobil 1 that go to work for Pennzoil, that go to work for Amsoil, and they all kind of make the rounds. They all know what everybody's up to, and all these chemists know how to put together an oil. They've all got some slight tweaks that they'll do to more or less make it their own, so to speak, but they're all very strong performing products. Yeah, I saw it. Stole again. Say it says license plate. Yeah, I can't really see. It says on my phone. It's this little bitty tiny dot. So, hey, give it a rest, will you? God damn, it was clean 3 licks ago. Let's see. Joe T asking, what are my thoughts on the Helephant? From just the standpoint of being just an offered crate engine, I think it's great. It's just fantastic. I think the marketing pretty much sucked because you're stamping out the Hellcat, footprints. Thought that was kind of crappy, totally not cool. But from just the standpoint of here's an engine for your project, or here is So I'm looking at the Helephant a little bit differently. I'm thinking, okay, let me get away from the whole stomping out the Hellcat footprint, because that was just somebody screwed up in marketing there. Taking it at face value, I want to know that block is going to be available. I want to know that supercharger is going to be available. I want to know that there's maybe down the line an option for that engine in a car. These are the things that I would like to see, but I don't know. It's 1,000 horsepower, but we don't know on what fuel. It's 1,000 gross horsepower, not 1,000 SAE J1304 net horsepower. So there's that to consider as well. I mean, if you're to take that engine and actually put it in a car, what would it rate out at with catalytic converters and a full exhaust system bolted to it? Tough to say. Probably drop about 100 horsepower off of it. You're looking at 900 odd horsepower. Yeah, I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to where that car where that engine goes in the future, and what parts are going to be available, at what time, and what kind of timeline are we looking at? Let's see. Hank 392 asking, do you know of any way to help your O2s last a little longer using leaded fuel like C16 for nitrous, or should I just use unleaded fuels like Demon 116? I would say, yeah, the O2s, they're not just going to fail right off the bat, but you will definitely start to run into problems with them eventually. Using an unleaded fuel will be just fine if you're running nitrous. I would say it's, there's plenty of guys running, MS-109. There's plenty of guys that are running the Sunoco 104 with nitrous and not having any issues. So there's nothing that'll make the O2s last any longer. All right. Gorgeous Scat 392 asks, thoughts on the Hellcat Red Eye? I feel like it's a better deal than the Hellcat because it's supposed to be $70,000 with 797 horsepower. Well, I don't know so much about that price. The last one that I priced out was actually $79,000, and that was a zero option Red Eye. I don't know that it's. It's not a bad way to go. I mean, think about it. You're basically getting the Demon engine, but without the Demon suspension and mode, the drag mode and all that. But you do still get a line lock. It's actually going to be kind of the successor to the Hellcat, so to speak. If you're buying it to keep it stock, I think you're in a good place with it. I think if you try to basically throw the beans at that thing, I think what you're going to find pretty quickly is that you're still going to be in Hellcat territory. You're going to be well within the range of Hellcat, modded Hellcat territory at that point. But if you keep it stock, be a great running car, and plus you can option it from the factory with a 309 gear, and that to me is kind of worth it to begin with. Zephyr R&D, have you seen Gail Banks' new diff video? Lots of cool things still coming from the ID. Yeah, well, no, I haven't, and I probably need to get on that. I've been so busy with work, I don't get a chance to check out too much stuff on the YouTube, but I definitely want to check it out. Anything from Gail Banks, I'm all right with. Always good to see Mr. Turbo in action, right? Let's see. Demonology, what's up, brother? Saying, B Mason, what are you doing up this time of night? Man, I'm always up late. Always up late. Let's see. Look at me too, checking in with, hi, I have a 5.7 all-wheel drive and want to rally race it. All right. So far, I have long tube headers, ported intake, 88mm throttle body, cold air tune, and coilovers. What would you recommend next, cam or forced air? Would probably say a cam if you're going to be rallying that thing and leaning on it real hard for any real length of time. Depends on how long your sessions are for. But I'd say throw a small cam in it. You can always throw a boost on top of that later on. Michael B09 says, best radials to daily drive on Hellcat. Looking at Nitto Tri-5s. It's the only way to go if you're going to be taking that thing, on road trips, if you're going to be daily driving it. Yeah, absolutely go with the Tri-5s. I always recommend those. Toby Rama, your thoughts on the 302 Windsor blocks. Are they good when it comes to price and upgradability? Rouse 302 start around $9,000. Jesus. Yeah, 302 Windsors are great. Get a pretty solid 450 horsepower out of it reliably, and it'll never break your heart. So yeah, they're awesome. Can never go wrong with the Windsor 302. One of the most bomb-proof engines ever if you keep it below keep it below about 500 horsepower at the crank, you'll do just fine. Jay Poma says, is it just me or do the LS motors look small? Not liters or cubic inches, just overall size from the outside. They are small. One of the best things about the LS platform is that it is a very compact, very robust, just unit in general. And it's one of the things that makes them so great. You can put that engine in practically anything and it'll fit. It's basically about the size, not much larger than Toby Rahman just brought up the 302 Windsor. It's not that much bigger than a 302. And You make all the power in the world of that thing, so it's pretty awesome. Let's see. Oh, Demonology checking in. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that very much. Asking, what are my thoughts on the race against Drag Time 720 McLaren? Well, I don't think you're going to have anything to worry about it. I mean, you've already kind of scalded the one car, so you know, I don't see that being too big of an issue moving forward. You know, it's one of those deals where, you know, you're going to be basically reeled in on the big end, but again, it's a drag race. I mean, we're talking about drag racing here, not top speed racing, and where the Demon does all of its work is in the quarter mile and in the eighth mile. And it just goes to show you, you know, the difference between you know, an American muscle car, a purpose-built American muscle drag car, and a supercar. I mean, there are a lot of differences, and you know, it doesn't even matter if that car could show a lower number in the quarter mile. It's got to run that number when he's running against you. So, you know, if you get to the end of the track first, you get to the end of the track first. It's his job to get the car off the line on time. So, you know, are we racing or are we just showing time slips? That's the main thing. And, you know, it's just like anything else. You know, it's like punching power. It doesn't matter how hard you can hit. You can't hit your target. Doesn't matter. So same idea. And that's really where a lot of the supercars come into play is, you know, they show a good number and they can go around a road course just fine, but we're talking about drag racing here. It's a completely different story. And when you line two cars up, it doesn't matter what your time slip says. It's who gets to the end and trips the beams first. And I don't think the McLaren well, I'll put it like this. There are very few cars, whether it's the McLaren, the Chiron, or any other vehicle out there that can touch the Demon in that respect. And also, too, keep this in mind, it's on them to not make a mistake, because when the Demon launches, it's gone. You know, any of these cars with, you know, the Demon, the Red Eye, and the Hellcat, they are very difficult to deal with, because when you stomp the throttle, they've already put 2-3 car lengths on you. It's tough when those guys are trying to reel you in. It's easy for them to make a mistake. So not only does he have to drive the car and launch it right, but he's got to do it without making any mistakes. And that's very difficult to do. Got a lot of folks checking in, saying what's up to my man Demonology. Let's see. Got some guys hanging out here with us. Let's see. Jay Palm is saying, not sure if the Nitto Tri 5Rs are all season, but for what it's worth, he's in Metro Detroit area. Put on the Conti Extreme Contact DWS. Okay, so here's the thing to remember about drag radials. They are definitely not all-season tires. You do not want to run drag radials in temperatures less than about 30 degrees, somewhere around there, Fahrenheit. They can start to get brittle. Now, that being said, Mickey Thompsons are more prone to cracking and failing, not failing like flying apart, but they do start to develop cracks in lower temperatures. It's just a function of how the compound is put together so that it works well on a drag strip. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Definitely not something I would you know, use as an all-season tire at all. Okay, Jonesy, the Hoods Up show. I know I need to get out there and actually I was thinking about doing an old school style video, hanging out in the garage with the car with the hoods up. Toby Rama. Dude, I almost had you. You never had me. Let's see. J Puma, Challenger draws way better. Didn't think I would notice it, but I do. Absolutely. Let's see. Mike, yep. Yeah, Nittos until snow. Yeah, for sure. Run Nittos until you see snow and then swap them out. And then Michael checking in, and thanks, Mason, for the input. Always happy to. Well, guys, I got to wrap it up. We are coming up on 2 hours of another edition of Mopar Chat, in this case, late night edition. Hope y'all had a great time. I know I did. Always good hanging out with you. I'm going to wrap it up now, but I will catch you guys on the next one. I'm going to try to start doing more of these for you. Definitely enjoy them and always enjoy the interaction with you guys. So Jay Palma is out. Appreciate you very much. Gordon Scat, thanks again. Stole it again. Thank you very much. Guys, thank y'all very much, and I will check y'all on the next one. That is a wrap. Adios.